Hello world, I'm Max. Welcome to another episode of the Stay Copy Podcast. As always, I'll remind you that this content is meant to be consumed in series from the beginning. See episode 0 and each segment appended for all applicable terms and disclosures. Appended segments can be identified by their title prefix, scp.0. Thank you.
Well, hey, good morning. It's a beautiful day. I feel great. Excellent sleep. Pretty much every day for the last 2 weeks. I'm still fasting from THC. That's going well. I'm Tranquility 9.7. Less sore today from these new flat shoes, and so I pushed further yesterday. I did like 3.5 miles. Today I think I'm doing a solid 4, and my tempo's picked back up a bit. Just heavy stretching in the beginning seemed like it's super important. We'll see how this goes. I just did a recapture of episode 1. I think while I want all this to be I want this to be rough. I think the first one needs to be smooth. If there's any if there's going to be any kind of entry point to what I'm trying to do through this practice, I have to frame it really well in the beginning for the outside audience. So I'm going to do something I didn't plan to do. I'm going to rename episode 1. I'm gonna recapture it completely and throw it out. Not throw it out. I'm gonna keep all the audio as it was and append it to the end of the segment I just captured, and let it be an example of how this can be rough, and then how it evolves over time into kind of healthier understanding. And so that's an example. I kind of want to go on a tangent here about doing THC intervals. I think THC was deeply necessary for the creativity of thought and the whole journey to where I am now, and how creating this content and sharing it became how I developed a strategy for how to do that. And I think it was through not just the inspiration, but also the discipline around abstaining and intentionally twiddling the knob back to high band thought. And so where I was in a place where I could consider how I could put in this fasted state, it's a lot easier to look at the content and actually, this is an important thing to call out. In an unfasted state, and sitting there super high listening to one of my captures, that's the funny thing about marijuana and how that alkaloid works in me. I could be almost more perceptive about how it sounded to other outside ears, and I could be more critical of what I had to say than I am in a fasted state. When I'm really well attuned to high band thinking, and I'm well rested, and I'm eating all the right things, and my brain's just sort of clicking on all gears, firing on all cylinders. in this high band place, I can be aware of that. Like, I have a perfect memory of being stoned, listening to the crazy shit I capture in this audio, and thinking, man, people are just going to think this is nuts. And I could be, even so in low band like that, I could be self-conscious about it and want to go turn it all off and keep it to myself. And what we all do, where we want to kind of fit in with the world and be liked by others and all that bullshit. But then, as I roll back to high band, all of the discipline I've built in myself in studying Stoicism makes me pretty immune to all that. I'm not. It's like low band gave me access to the emotions of the rest of the herd, and it let me view it through their eyes, which I couldn't see that while I'm distracted by this, and while I'm kind of immune to the critique of others. I think Stoicism really gave me a tangible, I can feel that armor in place. It's not that I don't care what other people think of me. It's that it doesn't hurt me. I am sort of immune to it. But when I merge those two things together through interval training, when I can kind of combine them and think about it in a productive way, it becomes really powerful. And that's not available without doing this. At least maybe some people are just Jedis from birth. I am not. And I needed that help. I needed to sort of twiddle the knob on the frequency of my own mind so that I could look at what I'm doing from two different perspectives and then marry them together in my mind. So when I'm in this place where I have that vivid understanding of the perception of others, and I can think about it like a mechanic, like an engineer. I can go, all right, well, how do I explain this in a way that's compatible with where everybody is? I can explain what I'm doing and reframe it, and I can kind of work that problem in a really efficient way as I'm fasted. Where this is where I think a lot of people make the mistake, and this is where things like marijuana get a bad rap, is people, they don't realize that they can't just stay there. It becomes super unproductive, and you lose focus of what your goals are, what's important, and you can't work on them productively when you're tuned completely to that frequency. If you can develop a discipline around intentionally switching between, then you get access to both worldviews and you can reconstruct them in productive ways. And as I do that, I'm going to work to call out meaningfully different perceptions I have in each mind state, and then how I use the space in between both stations where I can kind of see both really well, and how I use the memories I have from each mind state to create a more thorough, detailed picture of the world and my understanding of it. And I'm going to call it out, just like I do when I celebrate really great things I'm getting from my subconscious and my real-time processing. I'm going to another thing I'm going to do is pick apart these subtle or or exaggerated differences in perception I get from both mind state, and then how I do useful things with that, how I combine it. Just like the image I described that I came across on the internet of a cylinder in the middle of a room with a spotlight shining on it from two angles, and where you have true, but the cylinder is truth. What you're trying to do with psychedelics or meditation is try and get access to another view of the cylinder so that you can get a more complete view of its properties. And I think that's a useful tool, and that's a well structured model for how to structure it in your mind. And I'll be spending a lot of time in the future calling that out and trying to pick apart where I'm doing that, and I'm getting super useful results from it. What else? A fun thing that's happening right now is we're coming up to the holiday seasons, and in here where I live, that's Christmas. And I'm, as a parent, I'm at a really magical time in my daughter's age where we're forming all of the ways, the fun sort of magical ways we celebrate that holiday. And as a parent, it's making the decision. Oh, do I tell her the lie about Santa Claus? Do I or what are the ramifications of that? Well, what me and her mom came up with is, of course, we're going to tell her the lie about Santa Claus. It's fun and it's magical, and it's and when she figures it out, I'm going to. It's a really useful lesson about why, as a parent, I propagated something that wasn't true to her benefit. And so the whole thing can be really useful, and it can be fun, and it can be guilt-free. And so a really hilarious thing that happened is she came home from school a few days ago, like last week, and said, "Mom, all these kids at school have this elf visiting them, but why isn't it coming to see me?" There's this elf on the shelf that somebody came up with, this brilliant idea for talk about a moneymaker. But I like it. I think it added a whole new fun dynamic for ways for parents and children to celebrate the holidays. And her mom, so we're divorced, and we live, not far from each other, and we have a timeshare that's kind of 60-40, sometimes it's 50-50, and so we really have to align on how we good morning, how we celebrate, and of course, as her parents, we need to be and me and her mom have a really great relationship, and I think we have a good approach that's well aligned, and so we're figuring out how we're going to do Elf on the Shelf from two houses. And I'm sure I know that with as popular as divorce is these days, a lot of other parents probably find themselves in a similar place. And just the mechanics of it, because, I like the notion of letting my kid be excited about this thing, and letting her believe that this elf is watching her and going to report whether she's naughty or nice to Santa. And, it's fun. And at that time in your life, when you're just a fresh OS and the world is full of magic, it's fun to propagate that excitement and let it. I think that will do really neat things for as she develops her creativity and sense of wonder and joy. So of course I want to give her to have that. So we're working out the details, and her mom got us 2 identical elves with the same outfit, and we were trying to figure out the game theory of like, okay, the story says do this, and then because she's going to be going between 2 houses every couple days, how does the elf, like, when do we move the elf? And I like, at first we were going to do it to where the elf doesn't move so basically we would just move the elf when she goes to bed at both houses, and then when she would bounce between our houses, the elf would be in a different position. It was almost like there was 2 elves, and I'm trying to think of, okay, how do I make this logical? Because I've spent a lot of time teaching my kid to think logically and to do critical thinking, and I find her at 6 years old constantly like, well, how can this work? Because X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, damn it, if you would just take this thing I'm telling you seriously, and I wouldn't have to spend all this time if I hadn't spent so much time teaching you to think logically. So the mechanics of the elf really need to make sense, or my kid's not going to buy it. So what we came up with eventually is there's just going to be 1 elf, and we can do that because it has the same outfit, but we're adding a little addendum to the elf on the shelf tale that her elf knows she lives at 2 houses, and she has 2 bedrooms, and so she sleeps in 2 different places, and the elf's magic, so it can just bounce wherever it wants to go. So when she wakes up in the morning, the elf will be in a different spot as per the tale. But then when she goes to school, if I pick her up, I place the elf in some random place in my house this first time. When we get home, I'll be like, oh my God, the elf was, when I left, there wasn't an elf. It must have gone from Mama's house to our house. And then when she goes to sleep tonight, I'll move it, and it'll be in a different place, and the tale will be real, and then I'll take her to her mom's, we'll walk to school together, and then her mom will have moved the elf to a new place in her house. So basically, we just added more work for ourselves, but I think it'll make sense. The elf's going to move when she changes houses and when she goes to sleep, and then it all works. I can tell you that thinking that silliness through was actually fun. As a parent, just like like gaming out how we make this fiction work it's fun. And like, to my capture yesterday, being a parent is really there is parts that are a drag about it all the time, constantly, but the fun parts are so much better than what you get, especially like as you get older, because I am an old parent. I didn't have a child until I was 38. So I know what the progression looked like without a kid, and I know that 20s and 30s I it was always about where are we going to go drink today with me and my friends. That becomes really empty and hangovers become super intolerable. And then what do you have? You either find a way to power through the horrible hangovers by drinking again, or like I did, you go, this is unsustainable, and you quit. But then you really have to redefine your whole life. And I gotta say, I don't know how you fill a life with hobbies and things. And I think that children, even though it's hard, it just adds so much quality and so much, and the adversity, the difficult parts, make you so much better. I wouldn't trade it for the world, and I think it's absolutely vital to go through that experience, to experience like the best life. At least for me. I can't speak for other people, but that's been my experience. And at 6 years old, I feel like I'm through most of the pain. Now, parents will tell me that wait till she's a teenager, and I realize all that. But I'm spending so much time building such a healthy relationship with my kid, and I think we have so much we have such a healthy dialogue even at this age that I don't imagine a time where I think what I'm trying to say is perhaps it's arrogant of me or naive to think that getting through those years will just be a walk in the park. And I don't think it'll be a walk in the park. But I think the experience I'm going to get with the style that I have for doing this is going to be a little easier than I see other people having around me. And I don't know. We'll see if that plays out. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I welcome the challenge in either way. And as with all parents, your children become worth it no matter what. And I welcome it. So that's parenting talked about. Yesterday, I mentioned somewhere in my capture today, either the episode 1 retake or in this, that I've been experimenting a lot with Stable Diffusion and OpenAI Whisper. I love the idea that they're edge models that I can just run on my own machine. The idea of buying compute credits and using I don't know, doing it through like the DALL-E 2 portal is not as appealing to me. I love just the beauty that there's this model that's compressed down to like 2 gigs and change, and it can draw me any picture I want. It's really beautiful. So I've been trying to kind of experiment with those tools and see what I can learn. And I found a way to, so I got transcription working. I can feed an audio file into Whisper and get all of my text on the other side. I played with Tiny and Medium, and I'm doing it on a 2021 M1 MacBook Air. I'm going to try it today on my gaming machine that I don't game with and see whether I get any better performance. It's a pretty powerful AMD I used to know all these numbers. I would go to NNTech and Hard OCP every day and Tom's Hardware in my early 20s, and now I just don't really give a shit. I think it's I'm trying to remember what the series, and I got a pretty top of the line for, I think I bought it the fall of or summer of 2021. It's a 3070 NVIDIA GPU, so it's really strong, and it does, I think it performs faster than my M1 Mac. And I'm trying to, or I'm going to fiddle a bit with the transcription, the whisper transcriptions, because I think it'll be cool to, I mean, my girlfriend's Chinese, and she has no idea what I'm talking about with all this stuff I'm doing. It would be fun to be able to create a bunch of Chinese subtitles for my audio captures. And I'm going to try to get that working. But I need to do it smoothly. I mean, that adds a whole layer of production complexity to my capture routine. It means I'm going to have to, after I set up a day's capture, after I generate all the video, I'm now going to have to generate all the SRTs in English with Whisper, and then I think I can feed the SRT into Google Translator, because OpenAI Whisper doesn't support translation from English, only to English. So you can feed it a whole ton of other languages, which is really interesting. I feel like this is where me not being, not actually engineering any of this stuff or having deep comprehension of how the model works is a limiter for me. But it seems to me if they're able to do translation of audio captures of other languages and translate them to English, the other way should be pretty doable, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Anyways, for now, I'm just going to take I'll use like the medium model for my captures. It just takes a long time. It took on the MacBook Air, it took almost real time, so 30-minute clip, 30 minutes to generate the transcription, and I'd like that to be faster. So I might just settle for using the tiny model and its imperfection, because it can spit that out in like a minute. It's like 30-to-1 processing. And then I can take the content, drop it into Google Translate, and get the conversion I want, and then save it off as an SRT, and then I can add that as a subtitle track to the YouTube clips I've uploaded. It's just building, like right now I've got an assembly line going for doing my daily captures and getting them onto YouTube. Now I got a new complicated component I want to integrate. Eventually I'm going to want the whole thing automated to where I can just hit a button on my phone after I create a capture, and it's all transcribed, uploaded with all of the thumbnails and all that crap. Speaking of thumbnails, in how I structure this content I'm capturing locally, I have saved off, basically I create a folder for every episode, and in the folder I have all the raw audio, and then the project files for the the production file. And then I also have all the inputs, like all the JPEGs for the static images, thumbnails, etc. And the header I'm using even for the channel. And that creates a cool snapshot in time. And as I'm trying to create this rich data set of all of these captures, I think it will be fun to track those changes over the time. Yesterday I was playing with Stable Diffusion and I got some cool new images that I think I'm going to update the channel with. And so that means I can tweak the branding over time in fun ways. And as I think of interesting concepts that I want to display in a partnership with AGI, I can do that over time, and if anything, it just makes the model even richer. So, fun stuff. I'm enjoying my whole project, and now I need to start looking for other jobs. I want to go back to work in February. That would be perfect. If I can get a start date in sort of mid-Feb, that's what I would like. So that means I really need to get serious about the application process. I got my resume back up to snuff, and in doing that Lex application, and I'll do, probably I need to create some cover letters. That'll be fun. You know what I'll do? I'm going to use, oh, that's perfect. I'm going to use GPT chat to build my cover letters. Oh, yeah. Oh, man, that's great. Efficiency. Partnering with AGI. Amazing. That's a cool idea. That'll make short work of really custom. I love that idea. There's no rules against that. That's ingenuity for my profession. Okay. I think I'm done with today's capture. I'm almost at the end of the walk, and I feel pretty good with my new flat shoes. And yeah, I'll end here. To anybody listening, thank you.
All right. I've decided to do one more capture today. General macro and crypto thesis update. I got a in my Discord channel with my buddies. One of them, now these are two of my friends that don't really buy the crypto thesis. I think they've been watching it as I've participated with heavy skepticism. So friend A and friend B, I'll call them. Friend A dabbled a bit and actually did fairly well. I think at least a 2 or 3x where he dabbled, and he got out at really good times. He's in the camp where I think he thinks he hasn't invested any of the time in doing the heavy research to where he actually buys that it's useful, inevitable technology. More just it's an effective casino. I think he's kind of in that stage. And friend B is quite a bit more skeptical. even though he has a really heavy software background. So friend B links an article I'd already seen about Coinbase. So this came up, all these articles. It's funny that mainstream media is just watching the same Twitter feed that crypto Twitter and FinTwit uses. And then they're just writing articles based on old news that's on Twitter like several days ahead of them. So Bloomberg puts out this article about Coinbase crypto CEO Brian Armstrong sees revenue falling by half in 2022. So that hit crypto Twitter, I'd say at least a day or two ago. And they're just copying those tweets. It's funny. So yeah, I mean, but that informs me. So what I'm trying to do is use my understanding of how my friendships, how these guys I know really well, and how they think about crypto. Like, what's getting their attention, and what they're sharing with me. I think there's sort of, I don't know if they'd agree, but my perception is there's like a equal parts like curiosity, legitimate curiosity, and sort of looking out for a friend, because they know that I actually take this stuff super serious and I'm sort of fully bought in to the narrative. I'm drinking the crypto Kool-Aid, so to speak, in their eyes. And so I think there's like legit concern for their friend making a mistake and getting wrecked. And then I think there's also like a part of them that's thinking, well, I'm not making these bets, so I kind of need this stuff to fail. So there's also just that's part of human nature, and it's not something that I think if they're honest with themselves, can deny. They're kind of waiting for their buddy Max to fall on his face and say, "I told you so." But like I'm looking at all that, and I'm trying to find ways to just get them to do the homework. Go do the research to where you don't need, where it's not a meme, it's not a casino, where you're just, there's a bunch of hype around a Ponzi scheme, and if you time it right, you need to, if you want to actually make money on all this stuff, you have to get past that phase, and you have to go do a lot of heavy research to where you understand the actual massive unlock in use cases that the technology unlocks, that are sort of inevitable. And then once you do that, which takes a long damn time, then you probably go through a liquidity cycle, a macro liquidity cycle, where once you're dialed in, at least this is my experience, and I'd love to have them not have to go through what I did, where you're fully drinking the Kool-Aid, you understand the value proposition of the technology and the sort of inevitability of it all. But then you go through your HODL phase, where you build a thesis around a project and you really do your research well, like I did in understanding layer one. And then I followed the team. I listened to every podcast. I followed the progress in Discord from the day the Discord opened to the public. And so, I understand sort of the personality behind the founders. At least I don't know Raj very well, but I know Toli really well. I know sort of where I feel like I have a credible understanding of what his motivations are, why he's doing what he's doing, what his background is, and why his approach is the correct one for scaling the substrate of Web3, layer one. So I got that really right, and I rode the hype cycle that was created while the crypto casino was generating, when we're in this massive macro liquidity phase between, let's call it, we'll call it right at COVID. Well, there was really two. There was the phase between, well, that's not true. So for Solana, there's really just been one massive macro liquidity cycle where there's where lending is cheap and encouraged, and quantitative easing is happening like crazy, and helicopter money. So that's basically March of 2020 to today. So that's basically Solana's first real cycle, where basically when the mainnet went live for mainnet beta, and the tokens became available on Binance for trade. So from that point, from those 2 points, that's one liquidity cycle. So I spent the entire, so I got into the space in the last liquidity cycle, watching Ethereum, watching all the engineers flow into the space. And I got in, call it somewhere between December of 2018 and February of 19. That's when I started. So I watched crypto. It got my attention somewhere between August of 17 and call it July of 18. And I started listening to podcasts. I found Laura Shin's stuff. I found, I started finding credible voices to listen to, and then through them finding other credible voices, building out my network of understanding of what crypto was. And then I sort of, between that phase in that bear market, between, call it kind of April 2018 to now, and it's important to actually call out how I'm picking exact dates here. I'm using CTO Larson's indicator overlaid on the Dixie, the DXY, between 2015 and today, and I've got it set up for a monthly duration. So I can see the swings, and what that tells me is just looking at this one chart, I can see the liquidity cycles. I can see where the Fed's tightening and lending is discouraged in the Eurodollar market, and there's no extra, basically all the vacuum's on, and the money supply, the actual US dollar as a commodity that the world needs to trade, is getting sucked out of the system. I can look at that and I can see, so that's what I learned after this cycle. So after I went through Solana's massive run up, and I saw probably a 200x on my initial investment allocation, sort of call it before COVID. And then I watched it go all the way to the tippy top, about $260. The problem was I had such conviction around my thesis. I mean, that's how I got there and stayed there as long as I did. I think you need that, but then what I was missing is an understanding of the cyclicality of markets and macro. And when it pulled back in about January of 2022, this year, I realized, I don't have enough information. HODL, HODL, as they say in crypto, is a bad strategy because it's completely uninformed by the business cycle, the cyclicality of markets. And if you're going to denominate the value of crypto in US dollars, you need to understand its cyclicality. And that unlocks the ability to trade the macro cycle. in a really good way and apply a multiplier to your returns. So with CTO's chart, I can look at this and it's hilarious how accurate it is. Just looking at Dixie and going, okay, on June 26th of 2017, that marked the macro shift where you leave the gold of the Larson line on the Dixie, and then it doesn't recover and establish a macro trend back to a tightening cycle until October 22nd, 2018. So let's look at Ethereum between June 26, 2017. So on June 26, 2017, where are we at? There we go. Here's June 26, 2017. Ethereum was $60. And if I go back just a little bit before then, like in May, it was 39. So it did this big run up between February, so February 27th, end of Feb in 2017, Ethereum was worth $16.26. And then to the macro top the top of the wick in that liquidity cycle, for Ethereum, it got up to $1,400. No, it got up to, right around $1,400. And that was on January of 2018. So when you overlay the Dixie over that time, that's something I can do. I can overlay those, and I bet you I can do it with the Larson line. I'll try and do that, but it's too distracting in this audio capture to figure that out. But basically, this whole trough that started in, what's interesting is it's the macro top of that tightening cycle was January of 2017. So in 2017, January 2017, perfectly in lockstep with Ethereum being, around $16, the Dixie tops. And it starts plunging down from around $1.04 all the way down to where are we at? We're at $1.04 on January 9th. And then by February 1st, we're clear down to $99. So it just went down $5. And then it plunged all the way down at, coincidentally, peak Ethereum. It went down to $88. So that whole plunge, that represents, now that I understand the cyclicality of macro, that marked sort of the macro bottom and the macro top of Ethereum. So, and it was a leading indicator that was really good that you could use to map that out. And it makes perfect sense logically. If you understand that what was happening in the larger economy outside of crypto is the Fed tried to tighten because the market was getting too frothy. And because their mandate is to keep inflation at bay, they started a tightening cycle and they lost that battle right about then. And as they started tightening, the tightening cycle started like in 2016 to 2017. Something they were doing. They were not doing as much QE. They were trying some QT. I'm certain that between May 2016 and call it December 2016, they were tightening, and that drove up the value of the denominator of everything, the US dollar, and it moved from about $92 up to about $103. Well, when they lost that battle and they got a bunch of signals that the economy was turning over, they started QE, or they started lowering rates. And it goes in lockstep. What you understand when you go study macro is that the denominator moves in lockstep with what the Fed's doing. This creates, the mechanics of this is it creates a whole bunch of US dollars that get flooded into the system. And at the same time, they signal markets that to lower lending criteria, to encourage more lending. They say, okay, here, rates are down, so loans are cheap, and we want people to go lend, because this fuels growth, which is what our whole system is predicated upon. We can't decide not to grow. If we stop growing, the whole thing collapses. It must grow. The whole thing is built around that growth. And there's just a cyclicality to it where we say, okay, as a species in the global economy, we're all going to grow right now, and we're going to go nuts. And that's going to fuel building out new technology, raising the standard of living in the impoverished areas of the world, building all of this stuff. And then it's going to, but after a while, you guys, the Fed is going to say, shame on you, you guys have gone too far. It's too frothy, and it's creating inflation in markets. So now we're going to make lending expensive, and we're going to take the denominator out of the system. The US dollar is like a commodity, like oil. It's a denominator we need to lubricate all this growth and create, it's the fabric of how all this works. So once you understand that they're going to change their policy, then you start seeing the dollar cranking up. And when I use the Larson line, the trend begins to change direction in July of 18, and then it gets confirmed in October of 18. So what do we see on the ETH chart? July 18. Let's go to July 2018. You see Ethereum has already repriced down to 570-ish. And then it starts a long march down that goes all the way, it looks like it finds its bottom on December 2018 at $143. No, $81. So if you had used the Larson line on a daily chart, you would have exited clear back. So let me go to, I don't usually use a full web browser for this, so I'm not great at navigating it. Here we go. So now I'm going to go to a daily chart. For that same time frame. And the Larson line turned over on Ethereum on so it turned officially to blue on the daily on about March of 2018. It flipped blue. So that's where, using his system, I would have sold my Ethereum for about $840. And then using that same system, I would have realized that it was a fake out when it flipped gold, because we might have tried an entry right at about May of 2018 at about 660, but then we would have exited right at about 640 or so, where it flipped blue again. And then we would have stayed out. So we would have cashed out the top right at around 840. We would have understood by looking at the Dixie that we were in a macro pullback. We were in a part of the dollar liquidity cycle where we were in a retrace. So everything would have signaled we need to stay out until the Dixie, basically until the Fed starts saying, okay, we're risk on again, go lend, go grow. So that probably would have kept me out. I wouldn't have even tried through, well, let's see, let's do a comparison. So basically, where were we on the Dixie on May of 2018? May 11th, 2018, we were... Yeah, we were still deep in the blue because you use a monthly duration for the dollar. So I would have known, no, we haven't found a bottom yet. Or no, sorry, I'm mistaken that. We were, it's hard for me to do this in my mind because it's an inverse relationship. So basically, we're looking for where it flips gold on the Dixie. That represents a macro shift in trend that's going to be sustained for a while. That's a tightening cycle. So October of 2018. Okay, so what that means is we probably, if we were invested in Ethereum, the thesis, we knew it was a quality project. We knew the world needed it. And it was inevitable that smart contracts, scaled smart contracts was going to work. And at that time, the only player that seemed logical was Ethereum. So we would have gotten out at about 860. We would have re-entered at about 650. And then we would have exited right around that same range, like 630, 640. We would have lost just a little bit. And then that trend downwards just keeps going with no signal to re-enter until to retry a re-entry, because you have to understand we're in a macro, basically that the Fed was tightening. So until March 2019, we would have stayed out with all those gains, and we would have not wanted to re-enter until March of 19. So now if I go look at the Dixie and I understand that what I'm looking for is for it to flip from gold to blue. That means the printer is on and the rates are going, have confirmed a trend in the downward direction. So money is coming back onto the scene in a big way. So that means that happens approximately, that trend gets confirmed on, let's see, on the Dixie, that happens on July of 2020. But remember, it's on a monthly duration. I'm looking at two different durations on these charts. But so Ethereum would have signaled it was time to get back in March of 19, and that would have been right at about $134. That's right where it confirmed. So maybe you do that the second day. You get totally in the gold, and then you set up a buy order on Ethereum at 136.06 on March 2019. And you're a little nervous because you're still, so March 2019, what is that date? Let's actually go look on the Dixie where it was at. So March 2019, March 15th. So March 15th, I mean, it's crazy. That was basically on March 23rd, was the top. That's hilarious. March 16th was the macro top. That was the top of the wick at $102.99.5 of the US dollar. Ethereum just fires off like a rocket and establishes trend in the gold on the daily on that same day. So what this all points to is there's a cyclicality in macro. Once you understand it, you can spot, basically using an Ethereum chart and a Dixie chart, you can tell like within a couple days of when the macro top and bottom of the cycles are. So basically what I'm going to do is the same thing. I understand that this whole system is predicated upon growth, that even though the Fed's tightening right now, they can't do it forever or the whole thing breaks. So basically when there's a strong enough signal that it's broken, crypto is going to lead that, right? Because if I'm looking at the daily on quality crypto, which is for me is going to be sort of Solana, Ethereum, basically I'm looking for their pattern to shift gold. That's going to be a leading indicator on basically the day the Fed makes a meaningful pivot that the market buys. Crypto will signal that first. And because I understand that crypto is not, there's a huge casino dynamic to it, it's at the very front of the whole thing. So all I need to do is wait for it to flip gold, and then I can play that game on the daily charts and it will be confirmed, and I can see that in macro. And that will actually confirm when it's safe to make bets in the traditional markets. So now I'll apply that and I'll try and use that mechanism to understand when to go risk on and risk off in like TradFi. I don't know. That's a really long way to say to respond to what they were saying. But this moment in time really rhymes to me with sort of, call it in crypto. I'd say this is sort of this moment feels a lot like sort of early Q1. So basically Q4 2018, Q1 2019, and it aligns perfectly with a 4-year cycle. It has nothing to do with Bitcoin or its halvenings, like the halving cycle. It's all just what the Fed's doing. When money comes back, it goes to growth. This is what crypto is just modern finance. There was no innovation in finance for a long time, and now there's an explosion of innovation in finance and monetary. Once you understand these dynamics, it's pretty easy to play this, and with total zen. Like, I'm not stressed out by any of this. By the way I can see the mechanics of it and how it all fits together, it's very easy to make predictions on how it will behave in the future. So, good capture. Thought I'd get this all recorded. Anyways, if you're listening, thanks.